Must be wrong now.
That's right.
All right. Or until. Okay. Everybody all right? I'm not going to ask our visitors to stand because I want you to look around. Because as you look around, you'll see that they come from the east and west. They come from the north and south. This side of me is what? The south? Good. So they come from the south too. Invited to join with Jesus as guests and dwell in their Father's house. Just to look at his lovely face and fill with his purity. It was he who hung upon the cross to win our victory. May you feel comfortable within our midst. Once you are here, you are no more visitors. So I'm inviting you to be back next week so you can welcome the visitors who come next week. What do you say about that? In Jesus' name. Our call to worship, I'll turn to the song in my hymnal, number 441. The first stanza says, I saw one weary, sad, and torn, with eager steps pressed on the way, who long the horrid cross have borne, still looking for the promised day. While many a line of grief and care upon his brow was furrowed there, I asked what buoyed his spirit up. Was this, said he, was this, said he, was this, said he, the blessed hope.
As the fishes belong to the sea, and the birds belong to the air, so we belong to thee, O God. We have come together today to be in your presence, to worship and adore you, because you are worthy to be praised. May our hearts be lifted upward. May your Spirit take full and complete control of our lives, and may we be enamored so that we can continue to reproduce your lifestyle and live for you. In Jesus' name we pray.
Revelation 14 verses 6 through 12 is our affirmation of faith. It will be on our screen, it's in your Bible, it's in your bulletin, and so we all will be able to repeat and read together. Affirmation of faith. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, and the kindred, and the tongue, and the people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth, and the sea, and the fountains of waters. And there followed another angel, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented in fire and brimstone, in the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever. And they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Let the church say amen. With these in mind, we'll sing Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee. That's number 12 from our church hymn.
The scripture reading is taken from Romans 1, verses 14 to 16. I am debtor both to the Greeks and to the barbarians, both to the wise and to the unwise. So as much as in me is, I am ready to preach the gospel to you that are in Rome also. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. For it is the power of God unto salvation to every one that believeth, to the Jews first and also to the Greek. Amen. Here endeth the read of God's holy word.
It's time for prayer, and the altar is open for those who feel the need to come to the altar to present their case before the Lord.
God
Oh, we kneel in a moment of silence. Just reflect on heaven. The psalmist said, my help cometh from the Lord who made heaven and the earth. Eternal God and our Father, who art in heaven, we, your people, gather before your presence this morning to worship you. It's not because of anything good that we are here. We have done that we are here. But it's because of your mercy and your grace. You have saved us from our sins. And as we look to heaven, Lord, we look for help to help us to live a righteous life. Father, as we come this morning to worship you, dear others could not be here this morning. I know they will want to be here together with your people to worship you corporately, but they could not make it because they are sick. And some are getting old in age and cannot, too weak to come out. We present them before you, O Lord. The sick one, we know that you are the great healer. And there is no case that is behind your help. So we present the sick before you. For those older ones that are weak because of age, we present them before you too, Lord. We ask that you may be with them and comfort them, Lord, and help them to realize, even that age, that you're not forgetting them. You are with them. Help them to keep the faith, even until the end. We pray for those who are here kneeling before your presence. We pray for each family, Lord. We know that Satan is about to destroy our family. But with your help, we know we can be victorious as individual family. And as a church family in a whole, this Sunrise Seventh-day Adventist Church, we know the enemy is working hard to separate and divide and what he can, Lord, to weaken us. But we pray that you will be with us, your Holy Spirit. May guide us in all truth. May comfort us, may give us peace, and may help us to be victorious in the end. We pray for all the programs of the church which are in place to guide your people, to draw them closer to you, that you may help that all will be done to your honor and your glory. We pray for our pastor here. We ask that you may be with him, be with his wife, his children who are away. We pray that you may strengthen him, that you may give him the victory over any obstacle that will be before what the enemy will set before him, and that he may be faithful, and that as he lead our people here, lead them to have a closer walk with you. We pray for the one who will break the bread of life to us, that you may put your word in his mouth, and that as he speak your word to us, that we may receive, and it may transform our life to have a closer walk with you. And those that came from their seat and came to the altar, Lord, I don't know their needs, but you know each and every individual need. And at this time, Lord, we are praying that you may deal with them according to their need. Provide for them what their most needs are. Lord, if it's sickness, we ask that you may be with them. If it's counseling as family troubled, that you may be the great counselor. If it's struggling in the faith, that you may be the strength that will hold them up to draw closer to Jesus. And Lord, as we continue to worship you today, we pray that everything that is said and done for the rest of the day will be to your honor and glory. And you will receive the glory, and we will receive a blessing from you. Hear us as we pray, and help us to be faithful, even until you come. We pray in Jesus' name.
I remember this morning, Brother Lewis remind us that we have 3 T's. And one of those T's happened to be talent. And he remind us that we should use our talent to glorify God and also to bless others. And so this morning we are truly thankful for the talent of singing. And he has given this talent to Brother Foster, who is one of our fairly new members here. God bless him. We are thankful for him. And this morning he is coming forward to share his talent with us. May the Lord bless him, and may he be with us all as Brother Foster comes forward.
Sweet aroma fill my life. Rose of Sharon, show me how to grow in beauty in God's sight. Fairest of 10,000, make me a reflection in your eyes. A star shine down on me, let your love shine through me in the night. Lead me, Lord, I'll follow. Anywhere you open up the door. Let me know your wisdom. Show me things I've never seen before. Lord, I want to be a witness. You can take what's wrong and make it right. A star shine down on me. Let your love shine through me in the night. Lord, I see your world is dying, wounded by the master of the sea. Oh, groping in the darkness, haunted by the years of past defeat. There I see you standing near me, shining with compassion in your eyes. Day stars shine down on me. Let your love shine through me in the night. Lead me, Lord, I'll follow. Lord, I want to be a witness. You can take what's wrong and make it right. Day stars shine down on me. Let your love shine through me in the night. Jesus, shine down on me. Let your love shine through me in the night. Good.
You don't mind giving him another one? All right, thank you very much. It is time now for our children's corner, and this time our children pass by and they collect what is called an offering toward the children fund, the building fund. Oh, what did I say? Children fund? Okay, so children make contribution to building fund, so that's all right. So we'll just make that contribution to them so they can make it to the building fund. Watch them as they fall. They belong to Jesus, building up his cause. Sunrise, 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 see the dawn's fall. They are all for Jesus. Will you join the cause? See those little builders, let none pass by you. They are happy builders in the Master's plan. Sunrise, 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 see the Lord's fall. They are all for Jesus. Will you join the cause? See those dollars dropping. Watch them as they fall. They belong to Jesus and they're building up his cause. So sunrise, 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 see the dawn's fall. They are all for Jesus. Will you join the cause? See those little builders, let none pass by you. They are happy builders in the Master's plan. Sunrise, 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 see the dawn's fall. They are all for Jesus. Will you join the cause? See those little builders, let none pass by you. They are happy builders and they're in the Master's plan. So sunrise, 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 see the dawn's fall. They are all for Jesus. Will you join the cause?
Good morning, boys and girls. Today's story is called A Quarter for Jesus. Several years ago, a preacher from out of state accepted a call to a church in Houston, Texas. Some weeks after he arrived, he had an occasion in which required him to ride the bus from his home to the downtown area. When he sat down, he discovered that the driver had accidentally given him a quarter too much change. As he considered what to do, he thought to himself, "You better give the quarter back. It would be wrong to keep it." And then he thought, "Oh, forget it. It's only a quarter. Who would worry about this little amount? Anyway, the bus company gets way too much fare. They'll never miss it. Accept it as a gift from God and keep quiet." When his stop came, he paused momentarily at the door and then handed the driver the extra quarter. And he said, "Here, you gave me too much change." The driver, with a smile, replied, "You've passed the test." He said, "The test?" The driver responded, "Aren't you the new preacher in town?" "Yes," he replied. He said, "I've given this same test to many different preachers, and many have failed. And that made me turn away from the churches they've pastored. But I have been thinking a lot lately about going somewhere to worship again, and I just wanted to see what you would do if I gave you too much change. You preach at the church on Johnson Street, right, for the 11 a.m. service? By God's will, I will be there." In shock and in awe, the preacher smiled and stepped off the bus, and he grabbed the nearest light pole and held on and prayed, "Oh God, I almost sold your son for a quarter. Help me to always be a light for you in whatever I do to bring people closer to you and your word." This is a really scary example of how people watch us as Christians and will put us to the test. Always be on guard and remember, you carry the name of Christ on your shoulders when you call yourself a Christian. Our lives may be the only Bible that some people will ever read. Matthew 5 verse 16 tells us to let our light so shine before men that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So in whatever you do, make sure that God can smile on you, knowing that you're being a great example for him. I'm going to ask for Kyle to pray. So can we close our eyes and clasp our hands?
Thank you, Lord, for making us take us to church today to pray to you, and please make them get the offering. And thank you for the story and the children and the parents and how they brought their so in Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Girls, you may go back to your seats first. Is this yours? Boys, you may follow.
There's a day that our God said, remember, a day he created and blessed. On this day he still calls us together. This day is for worship and rest. So let's spend this time with Jesus on his seventh day of rest. All of heaven waits to meet us. Jesus Jesus calls to us, come and be blessed.
When we rest from our work on the Sabbath, our needs God provides in His way. He says, come, let's grow closer each Sabbath. If we love Him, we'll honor His day.
So let's spend this time with Jesus on His seventh day of rest. All of heaven waits to meet us. Jesus calls to us, come and be blessed. At the cross, God did not change His Sabbath. This truth in the Bible is plain, and the Sabbath seals all God's 10 precepts. His law and His love never change.
On this day, our true God claims our worship. This day is His signature seal.
When we meet these hours of sweet friendship, what joy and what pleasure we feel. So let's spend this time with Jesus on His seventh day of rest. All of heaven waits to meet us. Jesus calls to us, come and be blessed. This is heaven's day to meet us. Jesus calls to us, come and be There's a
Told you already that you are no more visitors, you become homesteaders. So I'm going to help you to get familiar with a few names. If you look to my right here, the gentleman sitting there, that's Brother Woolry. We call him Sam or Sammy. Anyone you call him, he'll take it. Whatever easier for you to remember, that's his name. The one beside him, oh no, he's going to do the benediction. The one beside him that did the prayer, that's Elder Williams. And if you don't remember that, just say easy or faithful and he'll respond. If you look over to my right, that's Brother Brensley Campbell, and if you don't remember that, just call preacher and he'll respond. Well, the one beside him now, the young lady beside him, that's not Sister Williams. That's what you see on your paper. That's Sister Cole. She comes in like one who was like the ram that was caught in the thicket. I just caught her this morning, so that's why it's not her name. So don't call her Sister Williams. Okay? Call her Sister Cole. And I am yours truly, Brother Powell. Our dear Pastor, Pastor Baptist, he will come behind me and he will complete the introduction. Pastor.
Great. Thank you very much, Elder Powell. Sister and Brother Chambers, we know you are in deep grief. They leave tomorrow to funeralize their mom, dad, and another relative, right? Right, so 2 deaths in the family. I want to let you know, as a church, we are bearing you up in our prayers. And we wish you traveling mercies. It's not easy under the weight you are carrying, but God is with you, your present help in the time of need. So we will remember you all in our prayers as you go. May God bless abundantly. The one who I shall introduce to you is somebody I knew for all my life. We come from a very big family. Our roots are in India, and we grew up on the beautiful island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In those days, parents had the wherewithal to compete and see how many children they could have had. So my parents decided that they wanted to aim at having 12. There's a baker's dozen. 13. 13, right? They ended up having 11. 11. We had 6 girls and 5 boys. And I want to let you know that although 2 of our siblings have died, all the others are very bona fide members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And our parents and grandparents died in the faith. So we have come from a very strong Seventh-day Adventist background. I recall in those days, family life used to be very good. The last 3 boys in that family, one who is going to preach to us today, myself and a younger brother, we all shared one bed. We shared our clothing. We shared our food. We never had fightings in our home. Sibling rivalry. I say thank God. Thank God we didn't really have that very serious part of it. We fought, yes. But, we were reconciled very quickly. My brother, who will be addressing you this morning, he was the first lay preacher in the Caribbean Union who baptized over 100 souls in a single crusade. I recall during that time of crusading, the weather was so bad. Every night after we finish preaching, the tent will go down. We will come back in the morning, put it up back, have crusade, then it went down the other night. It was under those conditions that, my brother preached. We were supporting him. And we saw one of the biggest churches established from that crusade. He is married, as you know. His wife is here, my sister-in-law, Mona. Could you stand, let the brethren see you? Praise the Lord. A little more about my brother. We served in the East Caribbean Conference. He was the executive secretary, and I was the family life director and the stewardship director of that conference for a number of years. So we spent a lot of years in Barbados. But my brother is known throughout the Caribbean. He is a household name in that part of the Lord's vineyard. Currently, he is the president of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines mission. Could somebody say amen? Very recently, all the presidents of the fields in the Inter-American Division met in Cancun, Mexico. And he is on his way from Mexico back to his homeland. But he said, no, he cannot pass me in Miami. So he and his dear wife have stayed by, and they will be spending up to Friday of next week. And I said, to God be the glory. And he has consented to preach to us today. And I want to let you know, big brother, that we are honored to have you here. This is one of the most productive churches in the Florida Conference. Members are well disciplined, hold to the old-time religion, and we say, to God be the glory. This is going to be your people for the day as you feed them from the Word of God. Before my brother, Pastor Dermot Batiste, president of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines mission, speaks to you, we will hear from Brother Dale again. Brother Dale Foster, where is he? He sang well the first time. We enjoyed it. And the second time is going to be even better. Wonderful man of God. He will minister to us now in song. And then the next voice will be that of my brother, Pastor Dermot Batiste.
when I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulder. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulder. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulder. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up to more than I can be.
Thank you very much, Brother Dale Foster. You know, you made singing look so easy and simple. One of these days, I hope to sing like you. But until then, I'll keep on listening to good gospel singing. Thank you, my brother, for your warm welcome and for sharing your pulpit with me today. It's a joy and a pleasure and a delight to be with you. I always grasp every opportunity I get, wherever I go, to worship with God's people, to mingle with God's children. Wherever we are from, wherever our roots might have been, all of us, we are children of the Heavenly King. And I believe that our goal and our focus, our ambition is the same. We want to be with Jesus Christ when he comes again the second time. I bring you greetings from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm tempted to ask, do we have any Vincentians in the house here? Well, any other? May not. One of the few churches I have gone to where there is not a Vincentian. But I'm happy that my brother is able to represent St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So for the benefit of those of you who perhaps do not know St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it's a string of islands, islets, and cays. An archipelago of islands in the Eastern Caribbean, just 100 miles east of Barbados, 60 miles north of Grenada, and 25 miles south of St. Lucia. Of the 32 islands, islets, and cays, 10 are populated, with mainland St. Vincent being the largest. We have a population of just about 109,000. And out of that national population, we have a Seventh-day Adventist membership of just about 15,000. So when you do the math, you will discover that we have a ratio of 1 Seventh-day Adventist to every 7 national. I think we share a common ratio with Jamaica. Jamaica is 1 in 7 as well, right? Any Jamaicans in the house? Very well, very well. So at least we have something in common. We share a common ratio of Seventh-day Adventists to national population. We became a mission in 2012. Prior to that, we were aligned to the East Caribbean Conference with headquarters in Barbados. As my brother said, I would have served there as a secretary of that conference for 7 years or thereabout. And then when the first region in the Caribbean Union was created, St. Vincent was more or less trial and error. The Inter-American Division wanted to see how well we would strive by ourselves. And so we became a region under the administrative eye of the Caribbean Union. So I was persuaded and asked to return back to St. Vincent to head the region. This I willingly did. But in 2011, when the Caribbean Union had their quinquennial session, I was asked to be the vice president of the Caribbean Union and also the stewardship director. But then 1 year after, as the Inter-American Division did their evaluation of the region, they concluded that we were able and qualified enough to stand on our legs. And so the region became a mission in 2012. Then they were looking for the leader, president, to serve the mission. And all of the members in St. Vincent made petition to the Caribbean Union that I be released in order to serve them as the first president of the SBG mission of Seventh-day Adventists. And so I went back to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There, we did quite a number of things. We have 5 schools in operation, 2 secondary schools, one on mainland and the other in Deckway, 3 primary schools. We have a dental clinic. And we have a worker force that is committed. Most of them are young. And so the lot fell on me to help to train them and have them involved in the mission of the church. All of our institutions functioning well. We do not have all the money that we need, but we know who have all the riches. So we depend upon the Lord. This year, our pastors have been aggressively involved in pursuing the mission of the church. We set ourselves a goal of 300 baptisms. And since being away, I understand that we are inching closer and closer to achieving the goal. Presently, we are 280. And so by the time the year comes to an end, I'm hoping that we would be able to sing the victory song. My brother said, I'm just returning from Cancun, where over 200 leaders in the Inter-American Division met together. And again, we were analyzing what is being done, what are the best practices that we can really take with us as we move the church forward. So we were crafting a plan of action, a strategic plan, as some people may say, or a map as to the way forward. Where do we go from here? As we approach 2020, if the Lord doesn't come, move into the next quinquennium from 2020 to 2025. Where would the church be? We are already at the crossroad. Where would we be in the next 5 years? Where would you be in the next 5 years? As individuals, as families, as a church. I believe, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, that God is positioning His church for the greatest offensive against the powers of evil, against the darkness, the gross darkness that enshroud us, that surround us in our cities, in our communities, in our villages, in our hamlets and our alleys. Satan is on the move. And as somebody said this morning, his aim is to destroy the family, His aim and his attack is against the church of God. And so he will try everything possible to silence the witness in the church. That is why you and I, our only safety lies in being totally committed to a cause that we believe is going to triumph, with or without you or me. This church is not going to taper off into oblivion. This church is going to be what God designed it to be, what God ordains it to be. Brothers and sisters, this work belongs to God. This church is God's church. It is not my church. It is not your church. Jesus himself says that the government is on his shoulder. And no matter what kind of attacks are hurled against the church, no matter where it comes from, the church of God, militant as it is today, will become the church triumphant. You and I can only triumph with it so long as we stay totally committed to the Lord. I like the name Sunrise. What do I get from the name? What do I take from the name? I would want to think that sunrise connotes the fact that the sun is always rising. You and I, members of this church, we have a role, we have a responsibility, we have a duty to allow the Son of Righteousness to dwell in this place, to encircle us wherever we go, whether it be at work, at play, at school, at home. That's our duty, to reflect the sunshine of God's amazing love, of his glory, of his character, so that we can help to dispel the darkness that is around us. You know, Ellen White makes a profound statement. And she says that the reason why there is so much gross darkness around us is because of the absence of light. And we know this. Where there's an absence of light, there's going to be darkness. So Jesus calls us to be the light of the world. The church set on a hill, beaming the light of God's salvation to all and sundry, so that those who pass by, those who are still groping in darkness, will be drawn by the light to know Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior from sin. And so what does the future of the church look like? Our scripture reading, which was so eloquently read by one of the future leaders of the church. Or maybe I should not say future. I'm always reminded that the young ones are the face of the church. As the older one fades out, retire, and perhaps become enfeebled, either in body or in mind. The young ones are the ones who are going to take the church into the future. And so for us who are older, who have been around for some time, the question that we need to ask ourselves is, what legacy are we leaving for those who are behind? When we come to the end of life's journey, when perhaps the energy that we once had fail us, and our joints are not as active as they used to be, what is going to be our legacy? What will the young generation have to say about our performance, about our living, about our example? So as we refer to our scripture reading, Romans chapter 1, verses 14 to 16, we had some encouragement from the Apostle Paul. Paul uses 3 I ams in this passage of Scripture. Have you picked them out? 3 I ams. Number 1, he says, I am debtor. And what's the second one? He says, I am ready. I am willing. I am prepared. And what's the next I am? I am not ashamed. Where did Paul get this confidence, this assurance from? As we go back into Old Testament, you will remember that the children of Israel were slaves in Egypt for about 400 years. The time came when God was ready to deliver them. And God chose a man, Moses, after he would have had his preparation by God. God said, Moses, I want you to go and let Pharaoh know that the time has come for my people to leave Egyptian bondage. Moses initially was timid. And he asked the question, but Lord, who shall I say send me? And what did God say? I am. Tell Pharaoh, I am. I am the one. I am who is always available. I am the one who is omnipotent, the one who is omniscient, the one who is omnipresent, all-powerful, all-knowing, always present. I am the one who is transcendent. That is to say, he is far away from us. but at the same time, he is imminent. He can live within our hearts. He holds the world in the palm of his hand. Tell Pharaoh that I am the one who has life underived, unborrowed. The one who was from eternity to eternity. Tell Pharaoh, I am. It was the same I am who, when the fullness of time was come, according to Galatians chapter 4 and verse 4, he took upon himself human form, was born of a virgin, came into this earth, my brothers and sisters, in order to be the second Adam, in order to show man, you and I, that Adam did not have to fall. He fell because of wrong choice that was made. Jesus Christ lived and grew up, and he began his public ministry. He referred to himself several times as the great I am. And so if you read the book of John, he identified himself. I am the bread of life. I am the vine. I am the light. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way. I am the good shepherd. It's the same I am who was in Old Testament time, who led the children of Israel by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. The same I am who provided water for them in the wilderness. The same I am who fed them from heaven's pantry. Daily manna came down. Same I am who protected them. So our God is transcendent. Our God is eternal. There was never a time when he was not God. And there would never be a time when he would not be God. It is this God that loves us supremely, my brothers and sisters. It is this God that takes care of us every day. It is this God who put food on our table, clothing on our back, who give us a shelter over our head, who keep our hearts beating. It is this God who woke us up this morning. And if you think that it is your alarm clock that woke you up this morning, take that alarm clock and put it by a dead cop. God is the one who keeps us in the palm of his hand, who provides for us, who protects us. And so we have every good reason to love him, to serve him, to appreciate him, to adore him, to worship him. And that is why I am still baffled as to how some people can think that they can live their life without an acknowledgement of the goodness, the mercy, the compassion, the grace of God. We know the story well of the Apostle Paul, his amazing encounter on the road to Damascus. Prior to his conversion, Saul, as he was then, was one of the most feared persons in all of the then known world. He believed that he was on a special mission to destroy the church of God. You know, there are some people who are so enamored by evil that they think that they are on a special assignment to destroy the cause of God, to destroy our peace, to destroy our tranquility, to destroy our faith. That's the plan of the devil. You and I, my brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, our safety and our security lies in our total commitment and consecration and dedication to God. We cannot live without God. Not even a moment. That is why God, as He views the church, He says that I am going to keep the church. I'm going to keep my eyes on the church. The church is going to be the apple of my eye. And enfeebled and defective as it may appear to be at times, it is still the only supreme object on earth in which He bestowed His full regard. That's the church, my brothers and sisters. So Paul had this amazing encounter. He was a man of passion, a man of zeal. And when he met God on the Damascus road, God had a special conversation with him. The Apostle Paul confessed, it is hard for me to kick against the pricks. I cannot hold out. I must surrender my life to Jesus. And it was total commitment, total surrender. Paul became a mighty disciple of Jesus Christ. And it is out of this experience with God, it is out of this encounter with God that he was able to say in Romans 1:14 to 16, I am debtor. I am going. I am not ashamed. My brothers and sisters, I ask you this morning, how about your conversion experience? All of us, we would have been converted by the Spirit of God at some time or the other, some earlier than others. What is your conversion experience like? Are you a debtor to the world? What does the word debtor brings to mind? Commitment, a way to view one's work. Our debt to God should not be out of obligations, but rather it should be a debt of gratitude. Why? Because while we were yet sinners, what happened? Christ died for us. While we were going down the road, the pathway of annihilation, destroying ourselves, not having a hope, not having a future, God sent His Son to be the propitiation for our sins, to bring deliverance, to jolt us back to reality, to help us to understand that life don't have to be destructive, but with Jesus Christ, there can be a difference. So we adapted. I am a debtor to my parents. My brother would have said, 1951. The Seventh-day Adventist message came to my parents. My mother, who was a staunch Methodist, accepted the Advent message. My father, who was a little reluctant, you know how men are, eventually caved in and followed. My mother, both of them were baptized. My eldest brother and sister as well, all baptized at the same time. And I often ask myself the question, if it was not for their experience, conversion experience, where would I have been today? I've gone to school with a number of different persons. Elementary, secondary school, even tertiary school. A lot of people that I have associated with, grown up with. As I look at their life today, as I look at where they are today, and I compare myself with them, I only had to conclude, had it not been for the grace of God, had it not been for the love of God, had it not been for the compassion of God, I would have been in the same boat. And so I am indebted to my parents for taking that bold step. And parents, I want to say to you today, one of the greatest legacies that you can leave for your offspring, for your children, is to help them to know Jesus Christ for themselves. Live for them. Live with them in mind. Our church, why we come to church week after week, and Sunday nights and Wednesday nights, or whenever the doors are open, why do we come here? As I look at the reason for the existence of the church, I come to the conclusion that God has given us the church with different personalities, with different nationalities, but it is intended to be an all-inclusive church so that we can practice, develop the kind of behavioral attitude that will be ready for heaven. And so in this church, we're going to be loving. We're going to be kind. We're going to be appreciative of one another. We're going to support one another. Instead of cutting down one another and backbiting one another and living all kinds of lives that are contrary to the will of God, my brothers and sisters, I challenge you today as a church to let the beauty of God radiate in and out of this church. That's how we are going to attract people to the Lord and to the fold. I am debtor to my parents as well, because 4 years after a secondary school was opened by the church in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, my parents sent me to a Christian school. The value of our Christian education, my brothers and sisters. In those days, we had to pay. And so while government education was free, my parents made a sacrifice to send us and my brothers so that we could have access a Christian education. You know, God has given to the church several institutions to help us to recognize that we are all debtors to the world. Evangelism, which is one-to-one or public. Sharing the word of the living God with our neighbors, with our household, with our community. Number 2, education. Education, as far as the church is concerned, is not only to prepare boys and girls to write examination and to pass examination, but more importantly, education should help us to be ready for the school above. And that's the difference between Seventh-day Adventist education and secular education. So our boys and girls are prepared. It's an agent. The school is an agent of salvation. The spiritual component in the school makes all of the difference. God has given us direct and indirect evangelism. He has given us education. He has given us the publishing work. That's why we have publishing houses around the world. That's why we have literature. That's why we have authors. And the more we read, my brothers and sisters, read the Word of God, read spiritual books, the more edified we would be, the more fortified we would be, the stronger would be our grasp on eternal things. Living in a time and age when the Bible somewhat seems to be gathering more dust, more than any other time in this world's history. I say to my young people, and I'm happy to see so many of our young people here, the more you read the Bible, the more you commit the Bible to memory, is the stronger your memory becomes. The more your worldview is expanded. And the closer you get to the Lord Jesus Christ. So Paul says, I am debtor. All of us here, we are ministers of the gospel. Not only the functional ministers like myself and my brother and others who have gone to seminary or to colleges or university. Every one of us who is here this morning, we are ministers of the saving grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Ellen White says that our baptism becomes our ordination for service. I understand that Brother Foster has been in the church quite recently. And what a joy it is to see him and to hear him using his giftedness, using his talent in the service of the Master. You know, when you and I give our lives to Jesus Christ, as a matter of fact, when we are born into this world, we are born with certain talents. Some of these are innate talents, but some can be developed by training. We are born with certain talents. But when we come to know Jesus Christ as our personal Lord and Savior from sin, and we take a stand to accept him as our Lord and Master, and we are baptized in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost, we are baptized with those talents. Then those talents are converted and they become spiritual gifts. And God has gifted his church for service. Those who can sing, those who are in the hospitality business, those who can preach or teach, whatever it is, find your talent, know your giftedness, and use them in the service of the Master. You understand that the longest time you are engaged in your election exercise? I don't know if it happens here, but I know sometimes in some churches, as people are appointed to serve into certain positions, you will always hear this coming from some quarters: I decline. Not ready for this. My brothers and sisters, may I say to you, and say it very humbly but passionately, if you're not ready to do service in the cause of the Master, it is an indication that you are not ready for the kingdom. We are all in the kingdom of grace. The kingdom of glory is soon to be ushered in when Christ comes again the second time. And there is going to be this transference from the kingdom of grace to the kingdom of glory. But as the kingdom of grace remains, you and I, we are called upon to serve the church. We are called upon to serve one another. We are called upon to do service to the community. We are called upon to be loving, to be kind, to be compassionate, to serve as Jesus Christ served when he was on earth. Here's our example. So Paul says, I am debtor. Then he says, I am ready. I am ready. Nothing is going to prevent me. Nothing is going to hold me back. I am eager to preach the gospel. I am eager to go to Rome. And Rome was one of the most feared nations at that time. But Paul had a conviction. Paul had a determination. Paul had a passion. Paul was eager because God had done so much for him. God had delivered him. God had saved him. He was going down the wrong path of sin and destruction, destroying the church of God. But when he received that divine illumination that blinded his eyes, it was a 360 turn. Out of that conviction, my brothers and sisters, he says, look, there's a lot of darkness in Rome. And God made it so happen that he was able to get free passage to Rome. You know how he got that free passage? He was in chains. He was a prisoner. He was being taken to Rome, where he was to appear before Nero and before Caesar in order to give an account of what he was doing. What kind of false message he was giving, according to the Romans. Paul says, I am ready to go.
I am ready to face the future. It is not going to be business as usual. I am ready to let all of Rome know that there is a man called Christ Jesus. He came from heaven with a mission to save humanity, to save you and I, of whom I am chief. And so, I am ready to go. Church, I asked you this morning, what are you ready for? I guess some of you might tell me you're ready to go home. What are you ready for this morning, members of the Church of God, members of Sunrise Church? What are you ready for? Some of you might say, well, I am ready to be recognized. I am ready for promotion. Some of our young people might say, I am ready for marriage. I'm ready to go to school. I'm ready for affirmation. I'm ready for success. I'm ready to make money. What are you ready for? I humbly ask you. What about the gospel? How is it with your household? Some of you may have spouses that are not yet saved, children that have gone down the wrong path, neighbors that you may consider to be irritating. You know some neighbors like that? You know, in God's scheme of things, God knows why He placed those kinds of people within your reach. Those who are irritant, you know why He placed them there? So as to help you to develop patience. So as to help you to develop love for them. Because at the end of the day, it is only love that can really draw people. Sometimes you and I can never fathom God. We can't understand how God works. Sometimes some of us, our spouses, we can consider them to be irritant as well, in some cases. Especially sometimes where incompatibility exists. But why does God place them within our reach? So that we can help to draw them. So that we can love them. Love covers a multitude of sins. Only love, my brothers and sisters. So what are you ready for this morning? Paul says, I am ready for setbacks. I am ready to be ridiculed. I am ready for disappointment. I am ready for tension wherever the word of God is preached, is proclaimed, is lived. There is going to be tension. Because we live in a world of opposing forces. There are two forces that are at war. The force of good and the force of evil. Wherever you have two forces, there's going to be tension. But it is in this tension that God says that He is going to be with us, He's going to direct us, He's going to put words into our mouth to say at the appropriate time. My brothers and sisters, what are you ready for? And then lastly, Paul says what? I am not ashamed. I am not ashamed. I don't know about you this morning. But as I stand before heaven and earth, before the dead and the living, I declare with no uncertain word that I am not ashamed of the gospel of God. Some of us, we are ashamed to walk as a Christian. I've seen some young men who are supposed to be Christian, wanting to identify with the world and walking with their pants down by the hip. Know what I'm talking about? Ashamed to live the Christian life. Ashamed to walk with your Bible, to go to church. Paul says, I am not ashamed. God has done something for me. And I say to us this morning, if God has done anything good for you, then you and I cannot be ashamed of the gospel. How can we be ashamed to talk to our son or daughter, our spouse or neighbor? Or perhaps not even to talk to them, but just live the Christian life. We are living in a time and age today, the social scientists call the young set of people the millennials. The millennials, and they're the ones who are very much in tune with modern electronics, cell phones. What do you look at on your cell phone? On the internet? Are you ashamed to send a text? A message of encouragement through WhatsApp or some other social platform to your neighbor or friend? So that they can know that you are identifying with a cause that is bigger than any earthly mission, any earthly cause. What are you ashamed about? Young ladies, young men, brothers and sisters. Paul says, I am not ashamed. As the gospel is presented, those of you who may be here this morning and have not given your life fully and completely to the Lord Jesus Christ, as the Spirit of God speaks to you, I ask you this morning, are you ashamed of the gospel? Jesus himself said, if you are ashamed of me, I will be ashamed as well to identify with you, to own you as my son or my daughter, saved by grace. So the call comes to us this morning, my brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. Are you ashamed to stand up for Jesus? Certainly, none of us can be ashamed because he has done so much for you and I. He means so much to you and I. When we were down the alley of sin and the transgression and losing hope and having no future, God steps in and he revealed his saving grace and his matchless mercy to you and I. This morning, like the Apostle Paul, as we close this service, I want to say, just as Paul said, Lord, I accept my responsibility as debtor of your love and your grace. I am ready to go. I am ready to serve you in mission, in service. And I am not ashamed of the gospel. How many of you want to make that decision with me this morning? May I invite you to stand to your feet? Thank you, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. Before we pray, we're going to sing 430, "Oh, there'll be joy when the work is done." We ask our praise and worship team to join us in singing that song.
Joy when the work is done. Joy when the reapers gather home. Bring in the sheaves as that of sun to the new Jerusalem. Joy, there'll be joy by and by. Joy, Lord never die. Joy, joy, for the day draweth nigh when the workers gather home.
Just before we sing the next stanza, ladies and gentlemen, I never like to end meetings like these without opening up the doors of the church and giving an invitation to those of you who may not have yet accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior. As we sing the next song, the next stanza of the song, if you are impressed this morning by the Spirit to make a commitment to Him, to serve Him in spirit and in truth, to love Him, just as Paul and the other apostles and all others who are here would have done, I want to invite you this morning to take a walk of faith, a walk of victory, a walk of assurance. Do not be ashamed to own Jesus Christ today, for it might be the only opportunity that you might have to do it. As we sing the next stanza, if there is someone here this morning who is so inclined to make a decision to give himself or herself to the Lord Jesus Christ, I invite you to take a walk of victory this morning and come right down to this altar.
Sweet are the songs that we hope to sing. Praise for the thanks our hearts shall bring.
There's someone here this morning.
Praising forever.
You have not surrendered to the Lord Jesus Christ.
In the new Jerusalem. Joy, joy, there be joy by and by. Joy, joy, when the joy never die. Joy, joy, for the day draweth nigh when the workers gather home. Pure are the joys that await us there. Many the golden mansions fair. Jesus Himself doth them prepare in the new Jerusalem. Joy, joy, there be joy by and by. Joy, joy, where the joy never dies. Joy, joy, for the day draweth nigh when the workers gather home.
We bow our heads and close our eyes for the prayer of commitment, consecration, and
Most righteous and eternal Heavenly Father, indeed we are very grateful to be in your midst once more. Father, we thank you for this wonderful message. which your man servant has bring to us. We thank you, Lord, for the words of encouragement. We thank you for your Holy Spirit, which bring us words of comfort. We thank you, Lord, knowing that you are still God, and soon and very soon you will be put in your appearance. So help us to be ready and stay ready, so that we here today may able to go home with you. Thank you, Lord, for hearing and answering our prayer. Save us into your kingdom, we pray. In Jesus' precious name, amen.
Amen.
Please be seated and you'll be ushered out.